Today we have with us Mr. Pradipta Patro, who is the head of the cybersecurity and IT platform at KEC International Limited. A very warm welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, we would actually like to, before we proceed with talking about what are the industry trends right now, we would ask you to briefly talk about your experience and introduce yourself to our CXO TV audience.
Yeah, thank you, Umi, and good day to all of you. And thanks for CXO TV having me here to share my thoughts on cybersecurity transformations and the best practices and practical practices as well. And about me, of course, Pradipta, and I'm working for KEC International Limited, an RPG group of company. And here my role is to minimizing the cyber risks for the organization, that is cyber practices, of course. And the second is that IT had role where we have to do a lot of platforms and a lot of digital initiative on the supply chain side of it, as well as making the lights on. That is what the primarily look out, and a lot of innovations, and we can bring in a lot of technologies to play or enable our business better, making more efficient and productive side of it, minimizing the OPEX, and of course that we have to support for the revenue as well, top lines. And the experience side of it, of course, 22 years of experience in the industry and digitization, project management, large-scale project management, and cybersecurity, of course, and strategic planning for IT and the roadmap for the organizations.
So, as the head of the cybersecurity and IT platform, it's a huge role to put forward. So, protecting sensitive information and ensuring the company's digital asset and security is primary role. So, could you please share some of the most significant cybersecurity challenges you have come across and how you have tackled them effectively?
Of course, yeah. See, as an organization, if you look into today, the digital assets are everywhere. And today it is very crucial to know and understand where your digital assets are. And due to this digital transformation and automation, most of the organization is unable to discover those digital assets 100%. That is one challenge we can see. And on and above, of course, the way the digitization or transformations are happening, it is accelerated past few years now. And it is not only restricted to IT, it is IT and OT, both sides. We have taken a lot of initiative, and organizations are moving towards more to digitization. If you talk about automation, what is it manufacturing side of it, talk about automation side of it, we are doing a lot of industry 4.0 side of it, a lot of things to be process re-engineering side of it. And of course, the challenges again coming down to that is the legacy system in manufacturing side of it. We can't change the OEM in the overnight and for the year or months time of it. It is long journey. So we need to invest a heavy capital intensive business. So we need to have proper planning for the long period of time. That is one. And third is, of course, the cloudification. That everything is moving to the cloud because of adopting cloud and leveraging the cloud, and time to market is important for any of the organization. If you talk about data lake, or if you talk about the cybersecurity platform or the SaaS services, everything is coming to the cloud today. So definitely organizations are adopting the cloud, either it is the hybrid, private or public clouds. On that perspective, if you see a lot of time that the environment is so dynamic, and there is a threat always moving around, and that on that perspective, it is a dynamic always having the threat, because we are not coming up to that space fulfilling those security plugins or controls effectively immediately. Okay, so those are the challenges, and apart from that, of course, the sophisticated attacks are happening today. It is I am artificial intelligence enabled, and a lot of hackers having a lot of tools, and they had made a lot of your malware tools available, malware as a services or something that way attacks as a services. They've taken out to that level. So this is what again challenging, and those are dynamic environment. And every day, we'll see a lot of changes are happening across, though it is a cloud or hybrid or might be on-prem or the application side of it or the user side of it. And business is very demanding as well, because we always have to be a time to market and have to better customer satisfactions or customer delights or customer centric, all those perspectives. So this is always challenges.
Absolutely, I agree upon that. With each day we have seen some kind of advancement happening. So, and while we talk about cybersecurity, cyber threats, as you mentioned, are very common these days. So in terms of cyber threats, how do you approach risk assessment and threat modeling to identify potential vulnerabilities in your organization's IT structure?
Okay. In fact, if you talk about the threat coming always, if you say, if the statistic says that in 2022, if I'm talking about the data breach is globally hit around $4.35 million. That is what it is, fraud. And second is forecast for businesses approximately 10.5 trillion. In 2025 estimated the cyber crime, due to cyber crime, it has been expected around 10.35 trillion. We are talking, it is huge. Okay.
A lot of cyber crimes are happening.
Exactly. And if you talk about the public, companies loss estimated around 8.6% of their value after cyber breach. If something has happened, the cyber breach has happened to organization, definitely their share market goes down because it's public and reputations, a lot of things is involved in that. So, and apart from that, if you see cyber crime, criminals are most of motivated for the financial gain, nothing about only to sake of doing fun. No, nearly 86%, if you can see, it is all cyber attacks as motivators, including with the state sponsors. You can see a lot of attackers. If you see strong 0558 team or ATP 41 team, it is all engaged, and it is impacted recently on the Western world. Having that, even though including the embassy of certain countries in the Western world, we have seen those attacks are happening. It is all state sponsored and financial gain for those cyber criminals. It is going up and up. Every year it is going up and up. Yeah.
Yes.
And basic and fundamental is, if you talk about the risk assessment, there is a basic practices. You have to do a lot of a time we forget the basic and foundational things. That is, I can talk about the patches or the firmwares, or might be you can talk about not configured your system appropriately. This is our basic things that has to be taken care, especially when you come to the cloud, and then cloud misconfiguration, it is heavily impacted. That is one I can see. And apart from that, we need to have most of assessment of IOCs and IOAs are implemented on time, so that we can avoid such kind of things. And while you do that, is I said it is a continuous environment, and dynamic, completely dynamic environment. Then our assessment should be also continuous. It should not be once in a year we have done some assessment that is done for all full year. That doesn't sound or doesn't stand all right. So we need to have continuous assessment. Okay. Yeah. And also the way we said, it is not the assessment to be done for certain point. It is done for the risk assessment approach. It should not be happen something, okay, some of the controls are failing, or might be certain things are failing, or some kind of technology can bring it to the table. That doesn't work in this scenario. You need to see that you have to quantify your risks. After you do the assessment, there are a few steps you have to do. First of all is the assess identification, catalogs. Then you have to do that, what is the attack surface it is. Then you can talk about more of what is the attack vector it is, which are that asset you have to analyze it appropriately and classify them into medium, critical, and low. On that perspective, then priorities as per your business, strategy, you have to prioritize your everything may not be critical for you or not to your business. Let's say talk about health business, or might be you can talk pharmaceuticals, or might be banking, BFSI, or manufacturing. The priorities might be different. So you need to prioritize those, and then you can put your cybersecurity controls or controls around those, whatever your priorities. Okay. And that is priorities we can define, or controls you can define people, process, and technology. And these three perspective. It is not always it is technology. It might be people sometimes. Sometimes it might be process. So that is where we can talk about a lot of assessment and how we can the threat modelings and all those things can be worked on that directions.
So while we talked about cyber assessment, I think building a robust cybersecurity strategy around it is often very important, and it involves working in different departments and stakeholders, as you mentioned, and it varies from organization to organization. So how do you collaborate with other business units to ensure a holistic and integrated approach in terms of cybersecurity?
Okay. So in this case, there is no called cybersecurity strategy. It is always cybersecurity strategy is part of your business strategy itself. That means moral of cyber strategy can be built aligned with that business strategy for any organization you can talk about. On that basis, if you talk about today, cybersecurity is part of both discussions, and it is a more importance is given on the cybersecurity because of your data breach or the incidents, or might be it is moral of impact on the financial and intellectual capital losses. If something is happening, either finance or intellectual properties, or might be your reputation, all those is around on those, right? So in that case, we should have clear cybersecurity posture roadmap, which can complement to your business strategy. On that basis, and the prioritize. What is the business prioritize? If you can have e-commerce, or might be the utility business is different priorities than the way I said, other business, might be like, manufacturing side of it. But if you're looking to prioritize for the manufacturing side, of course, we have a supply chain side of it, how we can improve the, for the productivity, efficiency, so that we can minimize your top, improve our top line better, so that we can have whatever the revenue for organization we have, at least we can have good profit on that side of it. So we need to look into all those in the business angle itself. It is no more like, it is the look into the silos. It looks into the overall perspective of organizations and the business priority and their strategy. We need to align on this cybersecurity. So that is what I can say. And if you talk about model of how we can collaborate with the business, of course, we have to quantify the risks on the business. Whether it is a business unit, we have to calculate that what is that quantifiable risks we can show there. It's not that I'll invest something X amount and I have to give the certain benefit to the organizations in terms of the risks. Can I mitigate certain risks through the certain controls, either people, process, technology, where I am going to invest? Looking into that, we need to convince through the stakeholder and the business, and ensuring that they'll be part of it while they see the benefit of it, right? So that is what we have to bring the value to the business. That is important. It is not only as a cyber security, we have to spend money. Of course, that is one way, you can talk to scare and spend, but here it is more of how you can bring business value to, business value to business. That must
be beneficial to the organization,
so that we can justify ROI as well. Yeah.
So, in terms of cyber incidents, such as data breaches, which can have significant reputational and financial implications for any kind of company. So, how do you manage incident response and recovery, and what steps do you take to minimize the impact of potential cybersecurity breaches? If you can highlight on that.
Okay. If you see that today, cybersecurity, there are a lot of attacks are happening. If you can talk about, if I can take today, ransomware is ranked as a top 10 concern. And that keeps security up at night, most of the time. And if you see the cost for 2023 is projected around 30 billion globally, I can talk about. So on that perspective, ransomware was social engineering attacks. 90% of data breaches are linked to phishing attacks. And moral of, you can see that it will be go up as well. And today, social engineering, whether phishing or basing, this is the most crucial for all, all the organization, irrespective of the industry. This is one of role. And today, there are around 560 new species of malware being discovered every day. Okay. On that case, if I can calculate 2,220 cyber attacks each day, it is happening, and equals to over around 8 lakh attacks each year. If you can say every day, 2,220 attacks are happening every day. So looking into that perspective, so the cyber resilience is important today. Whatever controls you are putting into the organizations, the people, process, technology, we can't assure for 100% nothing will happen to me or nothing will happen to the organization. That is not the case. We have to have that incident response management plan in place. You should define the clear role and responsibility. If something goes wrong, who's going to do what and whose role is what. So that does have to be clear, and there should be a incident response management plan. Okay, that is first most important. Second most important is again the cyber resiliency I told you about. What is that organization is planning for it, and what is that we can accept the risks, or what is that we can't afford it. Okay, those things to be clearly articulated as organizations. Third point is the backup and restore is important today. If you have a ransomware or might be attacked, companies would not be pay for ransomware because of the ransomware having the twice ransomware, twice they can give you ransom, because once you take it the data, then again he can come up again and some point of time again ask you for again some certain things, right? So ideally, this will not pay for the ransomware if you have the strong backup strategy and planning in place. That is a 3-1-1. The topic is basically offline, online. Again, the cloud is giving that opportunity as well. And today, backup solutions are coming with immutable copies, air gaps kind of scenarios. So that should be planned appropriately, so that we can have some part of, we can manage those incidents, and as well as you should have a cyber insurance I can talk about. That can be also think of it. In organization, we can afford those cyber insurance and plan for that as well. So that is one of things we can manage. And DR, of course, the BCP and DR should be in place. We should not leave that in aside while you're planning for it. Yeah.
We talked about data breaches and how planning is so important for for any organization. So at the same time, when we talk about cybersecurity, protecting the organization from cyber threats is crucial. So that we have addressed, but at the same time, protecting the organization from internal risk is also equally important. So how do you handle insiders threats and protect the sensitive data from unauthorized access within the organization?
Yeah.
And goal management is definitely there, but again, such kind of breaches might take place.
Yeah. While you think about cybersecurity, it is, of course, the external is most of the cases what we have seen, it is the insider as well. It is not only always in the external side of attacks, it is the internal. And in the internal, what we should have appropriate, policies and processes. That is paramount. That is first. And second part is how you implemented your policy effectively at your organization. That is a culture part of it. Again, third part of this, as you rightly said, the insider is unauthorized or authorized. That is what we're talking about. Is we should implement the people and technology part here. Is either privilege access management kind of for administrators, and recertification of the administrator accesses every month or week or whatever organization priority they should think about, and appropriate user access. That means, let's say, if user need least privilege, that is what the key word, least privilege should be given to the user in the first. If you need any access, then we can give them the latest stage in the first. And third is the micro segment. If something is happened, insider threats, of course, we can have that kind of control to block immediately, so that that will not. And third is, of course, effective managing the DLP part of it. We are talking about data leakage prevention and all. That should be more effective. If something goes wrong, those side authority or might be any authorization part of it, it should trigger your alert to your seniors or your management, whatever you configure for that. And third part is, fourth part is you should have the Yuga kind of, it's artificial intelligence, where you can build up your system today, all technology having those artificial intelligence inbuilt. So it can find immediately that what is the unusual behavior of those users. So on that basis, we can take up those. And of course, we have to do that basic thing again, firewall audit, your security web audit, especially CASB is configured well, so that we can get overall perspective of to managing your inside threats. So holistically, if you look, most of how we can configure your controls effectively, and that is the technology side of it. And people side of it, how we can give awareness to them to ensure that what they are doing, while they are doing, they should know that these are the 5 controls are in place, and this is that what consequences as well. So those things should be clear. So we can minimize those insider threats, even though we have seen that as well effectively on ground.
All insider threats are minimal, but yes, external threats are more prominent. But again, there and putting cultural awareness about the organization is very important in that case.
Right.
So as we talked about cybersecurity, technological advancement, we were just mentioned in some previous part of while we are discussing. So technological advancement is continuously evolving, and so does cyber threats. So how do you approach long-term planning and future proofing your organization's cybersecurity measures to stay ahead of potential threats?
If you talk about long-term, of course, we should have your right policies and process for the organizations, and also certain framework. We should build a certain framework, whether it is ISO 27001 or NIST or might be COVID. All those framework we have to adapt very effectively and implement those. What is working for you? It is not that all policy, all might be all framework will be relevant to that industry, but whatever it is more precise, that should be implemented effectively, I say. Okay, on that, then again, it is people, process, and technology evolving around. We need to build more of the monitoring and visibility part. As I said, the cyber resiliency part. And third is that the awareness part, people side of it, how we can much giving the awareness to the users and the employees around, so that they will become a human firewall instead of technological firewall. That is again it is a human firewall. So that is creating, it is not only the technology will be solved this problem, it is moral of making future proofing is all people, process, and technology. And the culture we have to build for the long run, for the sustenance, for the whatever it is, not for 2 years, it might be longer run as well. Yeah.
So, in terms of regulations, when we are talking about cybersecurity, I think that is the most crucial part. So, cybersecurity regulation and compliance requirement is very much necessary for any kind of industry. And that term, how to ensure that your organization stays ahead of compliance and relevant cybersecurity standards and regulations are maintained.
Okay. Compliance is all paramount for any organization. And regulation, again, the land, law of land. So definitely it has to be followed. There is no exclusion for that. On that part, if you talk about manufacturing as industry, we don't have that regulation, but VFSI or might be some other organization. Definitely there is a HIPAA or all the regulations are around. So if not regulation, that doesn't mean that we not follow those law of land. It is of course the SEBI or might be talk about the sorting, giving certain informations and about reporting structure and all those has to be followed. And on that perspective, as I said, yes, governance is important here. Regulation is one part of it. Of course, you have to follow those part of it. Governance is one more crucial part where how we can govern. While you're managing the cybersecurity, you should have different methodology. The way I said, you should have incident management response plan. You should have cyber resiliency. You have side of data governance side of it, and we should have managing your data effectively, efficiently with authorized, unauthorized, that categories. Those are things which should be there in place. And again, a lot of logs you can talk about, or might be the monitoring and reporting side of it. It should be more strengthened. So those are parts should be taken care of it, and the regulatory side of it. And compliance, any organization, that compliance should be there. Whether it's separate compliance or might be it is your cybersecurity compliance or the controls, everything covered, your compliance side of it.
So, can you talk about some of the tech priorities that we are going to witness in the next 2 years in manufacturing industry?
See, today almost all technologies are evolved, and every day you can see that AI enabled. There is a generative AI also coming up. With lot of technologies are coming up. If you think about on that perspective, not only the data is today critical and crucial. Whatever you do, any of the organizations, the data is crucial for them. Hence, I can tell you that data governance is important. If I'm talking about data governance, is that we can talk about identify those digital assets, discover them, classify them, protect them, so that we can minimize the risk to the organization. Okay. Second part is the digital transformations. If the journey we have, where we have to more focus on the supply chain, where we need to have how much efficiency we can bring into the table, or how much productivity we can get into it, so that we can have more automation part of it. And if you look into that perspective, the industry 4.0 and 5.0, the revolution has already been started long time, and manufacturing is picking up those. On the two more cases, if I talk about data governance side of it and supply chain automations, digital transformation on those areas is important for us.
So, looking ahead, what would be the emerging trends and technologies you believe will have a significant impact on the cybersecurity landscape, and how is KEC International preparing itself to adapt these changes and ensure the security of its digital infrastructure and projects?
Of course, the buzzword is already there in place. The artificial intelligence and machine learning is the most, the emerging technology, if you can say. And even though see most of the cases, if you see from code to cloud, or talk about submarine to the fighter jet, it is all is AI enabled, today, or even the robots. And most of the cases, even though technology, whatever we are consuming today, or the controls are there, all is AI enabled. Talk about SIM, talk about XDR, talk about MDR, talk about web securities, everything is AI enabled now. So that will give us a lot of proactive instead of the reactive in nature, the proactive on those places. And again, the blockchain or generative AI chat GPTs, these are all technologies significantly impact to our cybersecurity. As you know that chat GPT, even though there is a lot of benefits, but again, it is there are a lot of attacks is already started.
Yeah.
Those perspective. And there is a do's and don'ts. Already we are getting into all our employees to see that what is the benefit out of chat GPT and what is that you can do or don'ts. So those informations are all there. And third point is, if you talk about the supply chain, the way I said manufacturing, all is supply chain side of it. We'll do a lot of automation side of it and digital transformations, where we have, as I said, we have to see that efficiency and productivity on those lines. KEC is already completely aligned with the business strategy and business outcome and the value engineering side of it, and leveraging those technologies very effectively. Even though blockchain, we are started adopting those blockchains. If we talk about AI, of course, we have a SIM swap, which is already AI enabled. We have XDR AI enabled, and this is already to improve efficiency, net promoter score, customer delight, all those part of it, the outcome what you can see. So already adopting KEC as an organization, we already adopting a lot of new emerging technologies, and definitely we like to see more. And we are agile and more. Our management is always looking towards to see that how the technology can enable the business top line and bottom line as well.
So as we discussed, technological advancement is going to take the first seat, and we will be able to witness so much more advancements, and that is going to get implemented in different organization sectors. So that is it, Artha. Thank you for sharing such insightful knowledge with us. Thank you for sharing your time with CXO TV. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Amin. Nice talking to you as well, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.